All right, what's going on, everybody? This is Boxingwave. Please subscribe to the channel. All right, smash the like button on your way in. Uh, I wanted to do. I know it's late. It's really late. Everybody got to go back to work. I hope everyone had a great Memorial Day weekend. Shout out to everyone that's fought in this country, has done what they've done, and I hope everyone had a great, safe weekend. It's a wild weekend. Everybody's outside. The weather was great, at least in New York. It was great weather here. Everybody was cooking out, eating out, partying, drinking, and all that stuff. So everyone had a great weekend. I know it's late. Everyone has to go back to work tomorrow. Um, I was just watching the NBA game. Was watching the Heat game. I would have jumped on earlier, but I wanted to watch the game first. You know what I mean? And the Heat is going to the NBA Finals, and they're gonna face off against the Nuggets. And I think the Nuggets. I got the Nuggets winning that series in 5. Especially even more so now because the Heat's been playing. They went 7 games with Boston when they should have probably swept Boston. Okay, so I know they're exhausted. They've been beaten down even further, and the Nuggets have had a lot of time to rest. So I have the Nuggets beating the Heat in the finals, NBA finals, in 5 games. I'll say the Heat is probably going to win one of those home games, but I think the Nuggets is going to win probably both home games and beat Miami at a home game, and I'm expecting them to win. They just all around. I just still think that they're a much better team. He did a phenomenal job, being an 8th seed and making it as far as they made it. But I think that is going to end here. That run is going to hit in the finals. All right. So couple things. Just wanted to make a couple videos. I'll talk about these 2 topics, Tank real quick, and then we get on to Bud Crawford and his $1 million worth of game interview. Shout out to Sir. I see you agree with Bud when you asked Gilly how Spence have a better resume. All Spence did was fight more fighters to casuals. Yeah, I mean, we got to get to that. I'm gonna get to all of that, and we got to talk about this. I mean, this is an argument that we've been having a long time, and we're gonna have this argument over and over leading up to the fight. All right. I mean, it's all good now. I don't even care. We can argue all day about, resume this and whose fault it was this and all that. And we're going to talk about that more. But at the end of the day, I don't feel so bad on having these debates now that the fight is actually going down. You know what I mean? Before, it just seemed useless. It seemed like the fight was never going to happen. And as time went on, got burnt out. You know what I mean? And some fans are still burnt out. And, I think certain fans are going to be burnt out all the way up until the fight actually goes down. You know what I mean? A lot of people just lost interest in the fight. But we'll talk about that in the second half of this video. First, I want to talk about Tank Davis and his cryptic messages that he's posted on social media. You know how he likes to do. He made a post basically saying, don't run now, and he's pretty much talking about Devin Haney now that he's won the titles. And I said this even before the fight and even after, but definitely before the fight. I said, no matter how this goes, if Devin Haney wins the fight against Lomachenko, he was probably the favorite to get the Tank fight. You know what I mean? Being that he is undisputed, he is a free agent. You know what I mean? There'll be something there to offer. And especially even more so now that the fight has ended with all the controversy. I know the pay-per-view numbers didn't do well, but at the end of the day, everybody's talking about Devin Haney now. Haney. They want to see Haney. They want to see him against Tank. They want to see him against Shakur. They want to see a rematch. Regardless of what people want, the fact that Haney's name is always mentioned now. We've had a whole week since that fight with Lomachenko. We had more fights this past weekend, yet we are still talking about Devin Haney because that was the recent big fight. And the controversy sold his next fight, whoever it is. If it's not Tank, no matter who it is, Haney's name is buzzing. We're talking about fighters, potential fights against like a Regis Prograis at 140. We're talking about all these opportunities and options that Devin Haney now has because his name is ringing bells because of all the controversy in the Lomachenko fight. You know what I mean? So Tank, I think, just like I said before the fight, now that Haney has won the fight, he's probably their best option. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to, I'm thinking like the way Team Tank thinks, you know, and Mayweather Promotions think, and Al Heyman thinks. They're looking for an opponent that is going to sell pay-per-views, that's going to bring the numbers in. You know, that is their priority. Legacy is not their priority. It's just not. You know, and they've been open about it. It's about the money. It's about ticket sales. It's about pay-per-view buys. It's not. Legacy is something, it's a bonus. It's a bonus. And now that Haney has all the titles, everyone is talking about them. On top of that, a lot of people, Haney is the villain. He's the villain in the Tank fight, believe it or not. He is the villain going into that fight. Because at least Tank going into the Ryan Garcia fight, him being the villain in that fight, he did what he had to do. There's no dispute. It was just a dominating performance against Ryan Garcia. He stopped Ryan Garcia. He left no question there. You know, there was questions behind the Isaac Cruz fight, you know, because that went the distance. There was questions behind a Barrios fight because Barrios was winning on points. There was questions behind, you know, other fights too, where they said like, oh, Tank gets hit too much here and this, down and third, or he's not fighting, you know, top guys. So people always was able to criticize Tank because of certain performances, but because of his resume too. There were always people wanted to see Tank, you know, the catch weights, you know, losing the belt on the scales. There was always criticism there. Devin Haney has always had criticism too, in a sense that, you know, mostly like overrated type of criticism, like, who has he fought? Who has he fought? It's always been a resume thing. Oh, he's not getting the knockouts, but he kept winning his fights. And now that not only did he go to Australia, beat Kambosos the first fight, defended the belts against Kambosos in a rematch out in Australia again. All right. All the drama leading up to that first fight, you know, with his dad not being there and all that stuff. And then coming back here and defending them against Vasyl Lomachenko, which is probably a better name to have on your resume than anyone that Tank actually have, regardless of how you feel about that. I'm talking about legacy wise, Lomachenko is a better win. There wouldn't be a better time than right now for Tank to fight Devin Haney. In fact, I think this is the only time that we can seriously get that fight without it being a problem. And for him to go and say, don't run now, he's probably, I mean, we don't know, but he's probably insinuating the fact that don't run as in don't go to 140. You stay here. Let's get it shaking. Let's get our fight going. And then you go and do whatever you got to do after that. From right now at 135, which Haney is struggling to make weight. You know, but all the talking about 140 this, 140 that, where is he going to go? Is he going to go with Eddie Hearn and fight Regis Prograis? You know, is he going to move up to 140? What is he going to do? And I think Tank, and I love Tank. In fact, I would probably be rooting for Tank because I like Tank a little better than Devin Haney. You know what I'm saying? I love Tank. And I loved him a lot longer. Like, I've been watching him way longer than Devin Haney. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, like, this would be the perfect time to fight Devin Haney because all of it, the risk reward, the reward behind it, Tank having undisputed opportunities for those people that feel like Tank hasn't really accomplished nothing, winning these junior titles at 140, 135. They're gonna be like, yo, if the guy has all 4 titles, even if he doesn't defend them, that's something that he's gonna have there. For the people that don't have him as undisputed, that's something he's gonna have there, especially if he wins after Haney has Lomachenko on the resume, Camboso's on the resume. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're very calculated. I love Tank, but they are very, very calculated on how they move. All right. At 135, you know, they are more calculated than anyone. You know, I think the only other person you can really compare them to is Ryan Garcia, who was also Tank. I mean, Ryan and Oscar, very calculated on how they moved Ryan. They put him in the deep waters with Tank, but it was worth it because they did over 1 million pay-per-view buys. You know what I'm saying? The risk was worth it there. But now they're looking for something that's going to be worth something to them. And this would be a legacy fight, but it'll be also a fight that people will tune in. Why? Because they want to see Devin Haney get knocked out. People hate that dude right now. What did I say after the fight? Devin Haney right now in boxing is public enemy #1 right now. Just like that. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people here that support Devin Haney, but I'm sure there's a lot more people that don't support him. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he gained fans from that fight. He didn't even gain, like, for the people that thought he was overrated. And shout out to everyone that's coming in. I see y'all. Shout out to all of y'all. I'm definitely gonna, read some of the comments. But real talk, he's public enemy #1 right now. And I've read comments from people like, yo, if he fight Tank, I hope Tank knocks him out. And I'm sure this is not from people that even like Tank like that. They probably hate Haney even more than him. Haney needs to run with this narrative that, he's getting by on fights and, he's getting, all these privileges. He needs to run with that and do what he got to do. And hopefully he gets a back fight in Tank. I think my only concern, obviously, we don't know if this is really going to be like a real fight. We don't know. We just got to wait and see. I think the only concern that I have is them lowballing Devin Haney, because even though his pay-per-views failed, right? Even though they only did 150K buys and all of that, I'm just hoping that they don't go into it like, listen, you got all 4 titles, but we're giving you a small percentage of this purse. And Haney, just like Eddie Hearn has said, he's expensive. He's expensive. He's been getting paid. So even if the pay-per-views, are low, or the ticket sales are low in comparison to Tank, Haney is not going to walk in there and get lowballed. He's not. He'll walk right away from that Tank fight if the money ain't right, because Haney and his father, they're businessmen. They're all about that money too. You know what I'm saying? They chasing legacy. Yes, they were hunting down people. They wanted Loma, right? They wanted Loma. They wanted T.O. They wanted Ryan. They wanted all of those fights. They wanted Tank. They wanted all of those fights. But at the end of the day, those guys are businessmen too. And even if Tank wants it, which I hope he really does, it got to make sense to both fighters. It's not going to be one-sided when it comes to the negotiations. Haney has something to offer. He is the champion. Tank never chased champions. Tank always chased the bag. It was always just the bag. Where Haney, he want the bag. He got paid, of course. But at the same time, he chased legacy too. Say what you want about him, but the dude is looking to fight the very best. He's always been consistently fighting the very best. Shout out to everyone that's coming in. Please smash the like button on your way in. Nelson said nobody beating Denver. Yeah, no one's beating Denver. Denver has already went through the trenches, and for them to sweep the Lakers, it says a lot. All right. QT says, yeah, I don't care. What stuck out to me is Buzz said, this is my time to show the world why I couldn't get the big fights. Yes, and I actually agree with what he said there. Arthur says, "What up, Wade? What up, Arthur? Light skin business. What's up with you?" Um, Sir Upper Crust says, "I would love to see Tank. I would love to see Loma and Tank. I would love to see that too. I would love to see that too. But I would love to see Tank and Haney more, and I would love to see Tank and Shakur more." What's up, Boston's? Uh, what's up, everybody? Jamin says, "Do I think Haney going to 140 instead, or going to campaign one more time at 135?" I think Haney campaigns one more time if it's Tank and no one else. I've said this consistently. He got Loma, right? The only other person that he wants to fight right now at 135, in my opinion, because I don't know this, I don't know the Haneys, is Tank Davis. He said already a while back, I want to stay at 135 because the money is there. Well, if they can work something out with Tank, they will stay. If not, he's going up to 140. He's not fighting Shakur Stevenson at 135. It's not happening. Shakur Stevenson will happen in the upper weights. I mean, even he said it. I see it down the line at 140, even maybe at 147. Devin Haney does not have any intentions on fighting Shakur Stevenson right now. Don't even hold your breath, unless Bob is looking to put up stupid money to get to get Haney back on there. I don't see it happening. I'm not even trying to entertain the possibility of that happening. You know what I'm saying? I think Haney stays down there for Tank if they are willing to pay a good penny to get Haney to fight, Tank and all that. And that's it. You know what I mean? And that's the way I look at it. If not, then Tank is gonna go and probably fight Isaac Cruz, which I personally believe they've been saving and keeping him ripe so they can throw him back in a rematch with Tank, make that a pay-per-view, because of their first fight being so competitive. And that's the second option. But the first option is probably Haney, depending on how the money is looking, how the negotiations is looking. That's my opinion. That's not no inside talk. That's just the way I'm looking at it, the way they move. Historically, the way that they move, that's the way that I'm looking at it. You know what I mean? Sir says, Tank got to fight some black fighters for him to be certified. Floyd became a Mexican beater and built his career off avoiding the best black fighters. Not 100% accurate. Okay. I think at certain points, yes, I did want him to fight some black fighters, especially the ones at 154, more so the ones at 147. The younger guys that were coming up when he was holding titles like Andrade and Lara. Lara is a dream fight for me and Floyd. But just to go and say that he just avoided them, I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true. All right. I don't think that's 100% accurate. I think there's some truth. There were certain fights that I wanted to see with Floyd that involved black fighters, Paul Williams, Lara, this guy, Andrade, some of the younger guys. But at the end of the day, he fought good people. You know what I'm saying? He fought guys that were always champions and all of that. Floyd fought good people throughout his whole career. So I'm not going to go all the way with that. All right. But as far as Haney, fighting black fighters, at the end of the day, he hasn't been ducking anybody. Devin Haney has not ducked anybody. He's called out the best, and the best at that time was Ryan, Loma, Tank, right? And Ryan, Loma, Tank, and Teofimo, right? When they were at 135. Shakur just got there. So there hasn't been any room and time to duck these fighters. Haney has fought the fighters that are the best at the division. Kambosos was the champion. And he had to agree for 2 fights in order for that fight to happen. Loma is someone that he probably didn't have to fight, but he chose to fight him because this was a fight that he wanted, even when Loma was the champion. You know what I mean? But Tank wasn't an option. All right. So when we say black fighters, who are we talking about? Are we talking about Frank Martin? Well, he's just getting warmed up. Well, who are we talking about? Keyshawn Davis? Floyd Schofield? Like, who are we talking about? What are we talking about when we say black fighters? The top of the guys at 135 has been uh, a lot of these Mexican or European fighters. That's not Haney's fault, you know. Uh, he said Tank's scared to fight at 140 with anybody, and he knocked out Barrios. Well, he fought Barrios at 140, you know, but Barrios probably shouldn't have been at 140. And that's why he's up at 147. And he looks strong at 147. And I think Tank will be, I mean, I'm sorry. I think Haney will be strong at 140, 140. I think Tank belongs at 135 because he's legit small. You know what I mean? Rhoda says Dubois and Usyk is a dead fight. I'm not interested in that fight anyway, so they can dead it. I don't even know why Dubois is that high on the rankings. You know what I mean? Boston says, I was not a big fan of Haney before the Loma fight, but wow, the hate is unwarranted. Yeah, but it's warranted to everyone that think Loma won, and most people thought Loma won. I don't think he won, but most people did. You know, it is what it is. Nelson says Floyd got rich fighting Mexicans because of the hate of Mexican and white fans had for Floyd, and he exploited them because of their hate. Yeah, well, people paid to see him lose. It is what it is. You know, when you could fight guys like, you know, not that he was bad, but Robert Guerrero, for example, you know what I mean? People wanted to see Floyd lose that fight. Anyone that knew anyone that had any sense knew that Floyd was going to beat him easily. But, you know, all of these guys had this approach where they was going to be aggressive towards him. First of all, I don't want to keep talking about Floyd Mayweather. Let me just say that. I think the Haney and Floyd comparisons are it's too much. You know what I mean? And I think that's another problem. Oh man, I was listening to somebody the other day. I don't know what channel or what media channel, but they was just talking about Floyd. And I'm just like, man, like I just don't see like what are we doing with the Floyd comparison? Like, what are we doing now? I think at this point, I guess the hatred people have for Haney, I guess you can compare it being that he's black. But Floyd was just a different level. Like, what exactly are we comparing? You know, because there's nothing about Haney that I feel like when I watch him, there's nothing about him that reminds me of Floyd. Outside of that, they kind of favor each other a little bit. You know what I mean? I just don't like doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't think he's like a Floyd to me. You know what I mean? I think he's a good fighter. He's his own fighter. He's his own guy. You know, but I give him credit. I think he won the fight. I think he did a phenomenal job. You know, it was still close. It was very competitive. He did better than what, you know, many of us thought he was going to do. But, you know, he's a good fighter. But the Floyd comparison is just too much of it. You know what I mean? So, yeah. All right. So I think to put it all in this real quick, if you're just getting here, this is what I think is going to happen. I think that Tank and Haney are going to try to work something out. If the money makes sense for both sides, they're going to get it on. They both equally have a lot to gain from this fight. Tank, Money Man, Haney's name is hot right now. Forget the pay-per-view. His name is buzzing right now. All right. And the bonus is it's a legacy fight because it's for undisputed, which is something that Tank does not have. So there's something in it for Tank, and obviously there's something in it for Haney. Tank is undefeated. If he's the first to beat Haney, he's gonna be big, you know. But if that fight doesn't happen, I'm expecting Haney to move up to 140. I think the only other fighter that Haney may possibly fight at 135 one last time is the Lomachenko rematch. That is the only other option for Haney at 135. If not, he's moving on up. So if Bob is somehow able to throw him the bag and get him back in there with a rematch with Loma, I can see it taking place. Any other fight, I just don't see it right now. He'll move up to 140, and that'll be that. All right. Shout out to everyone. What's up, Red? What's up? What's up, Josh? What's up, Raul? What's good? Everyone that's joining, Maker, what's up? I see you. Shout out to everyone that's joining the chat. Please smash the like button. All right, so let's talk about Terence Crawford. I did watch his interview when they premiered it on $1 Million Worth of Game. Now, if you're not familiar with the podcast, it's a hip hop podcast. It's been around for a while. Gilly the Kid, former Philly rapper, his cousin Wallow, big fan of both of them. Been watching them for a while. I love the podcast. I don't watch it all the time, but depending on who's the guest, I guess at one point I watched it more. I think when they became popular, too much commercials, too much stuff going on, but it's still a good show. They're both very, very funny. And I love this show. You know what I mean? They interviewed Terence Bud Crawford. All right. They had him there as a guest, and they were definitely there to talk about the Errol Spence fight, the upcoming fight. I heard at some point of the interview where Bud was explaining the Loma and Haney fight. So he announced the fight on this podcast, but judging on how they interviewed each other, the interview went, Bud made a comment saying that the fight with Haney and Loma was last night. So they released the podcast yesterday, but this podcast was already pre-recorded at least a week ago. You know what I mean? It's a funny podcast. It's a funny interview. Gilly, Wallow doesn't know anything about boxing, right? He's a jokester. He's a really positive dude. Gilly follows boxing. He's still a casual, but he's in tune. You know what I'm saying? He's from Philly. He's well connected in Philly, and he has a relationship with all of the Philly boxers: Danny Garcia, Jerome Boots Ennis, Bernard Hopkins. You know what I'm saying? He's in the mix with all of them. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, oh wow, Eddie, I just saw your comment. He says, I heard through the wire ESPN is not renewing Top Rank. Wow. Okay, we'll get there when we get there. All right. I don't want to talk about that because I don't know, but I'll keep that in mind. I'll do some research on that. The podcast was funny. There were certain points where, it's not a boxing podcast. So there's a lot of things that Bud is going to throw at Gilly. Gilly did do his homework, but he doesn't follow it enough to know. It's not like he's being interviewed by a diehard boxing fan or someone from the media that is familiar with all of these fighters that's on Spence's and Bud's resume. Gilly doesn't have the knowledge. So even though Gilly asks some tough questions, all right, he's not equipped to go back and forth with Bud. So when Bud answered these questions, he always had the right answer. You know what I mean? But not saying that what Crawford said was wrong, but what I'm saying that the debates could have been a little better if he was being interviewed by someone that was familiar with both of their resumes. You know what I mean? Like for the longest time, when he's talking about Spence and his durability, no one really brings up the Larte fight. Not that it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant at this point because the fight was so long ago. But when we talk about Spence getting buzzed, the only person that people normally brings up is the Ugas fight. That's the only time that Spence got buzzed. No one brings the Larte fight up because it was so long ago. You know what I mean? And it's okay. It's not a big deal. We know Bud got buzzed against Gamboa. We know he got buzzed by Kavalaskis. You know what I'm saying? But those are more recent. Well, Gamboa was a long time ago, but Gamboa fight was a big fight. Errol Spence versus Larte happened when Spence was still a prospect. You know what I mean? So no one really brings that up like that. But you can bring it up if we're talking about who's getting hurt. Like Canelo Alvarez. We know that Jose Miguel Cotto hurt him bad, right? Hurt him real bad. But at the end of the day, the fight was so damn long ago. These guys improved since those fights. You know, it's not a big deal. But most people are not going to bring those up. Now, first topic, because I wrote like a little few notes on different points of the interview. Kell Brook argument. This is an ongoing argument when it comes to Bud and Spence because it's a common opponent. All right. They fought in completely different times and completely different circumstances. Okay. When it comes to Kell Brook, there's always this debate on who fought the better version, Spence or Bud Crawford. All right. Obviously, Spence fought him a lot earlier. It was for a title at that time. Spence flew out to the UK to fight Kell Brook in his backyard and stopped him. He beat him. Okay. That was years ago. You know, I don't know the right year, but I think maybe 2017, right? I don't have the resumes up. I'm thinking 2017, it was a big deal at the time. And then Bud fought Kell Brook maybe around 2021, was it? Okay, so it's been years. All right. Now, Bud made his argument in his stance like, look, Spence beat Bud up. I'm sorry, Spence beat Kell Brook up at a time where Brook was badly beaten by Triple G, right? Broke one of his side of his this eye socket, right? Broke one of those at 160. Brook came back down and fought Errol in the very next fight, and Errol brought the other side. Wallow made a hilarious joke. If you didn't see it, it was funny. Just check the interview out, only because it's a funny interview. Wallow goes and said, "Oh, you fought a man that got you got both of his eyes broken. You fought a blind man. That's messed up. Why did you even fight him? Because he fought a guy that had two sides of his face broken." So he made a funny joke about that. But Bud's argument was, I fought Kell Brook, the better version of Kell Brook, because Kell Brook was coming off 3 wins in a row, right? 3 wins in a row. This is, you know, he was in the best shape of his life. Kell Brook said this was the best shape of his life. You know what I'm saying? I mean, going into the fight, Kell Brook physically looked phenomenal. All right. But in my opinion, even though Kell Brook was damaged in the Errol Spence fight, yes, he was damaged, and yes, he had success earlier in the first half of the fight. I still don't think that Kell Brook was in his prime or anywhere close it at the time that Bud fought him. You know what I'm saying? So we can argue all day which version was better. I think Kell Brook was better than before he fought Triple G. The Triple G fight damaged him, and he was no longer the same fighter that he was. Before the Triple G fight, the Shawn Porter version of Kell Brook was the best version of Kell Brook. Okay? Spence fought him on a time when he was drained and was injured. But Bud fought him 4 years after that. And even though he was coming off of 3 wins in a row, who were they against? No one that he had any business losing to. All right. Robchenko, Zarafa, and DeLuca are not, those are 3 wins that you should get. You know what I'm saying? It's no question that Kell Brook, even a damaged version of him, should pick up those wins. But then you go into the Terence Crawford fight. Did that one hook that hurt Kell Brook in a Bud fight, would that one hook had hurt him that quickly if this was the same version of Kell Brook that fought Shawn Porter? I don't know. You know, it is what it is. The guy just wasn't the same. He wasn't the same since Triple G. He just wasn't. And I used to argue about this all the time on my channel. That was Eddie Hearn's one of his worst decisions to do for one of his fighters. You gotta remember, if you don't know or if you forgot, at that time, Errol Spence was already the mandatory for Kell Brook's title before Triple G. So he goes to 160, a fight that no one was asking for, as an undefeated fighter in his prime, to fight Triple G at 160, no catch weight. He gets brutally beaten and comes right back down to make 147 again as a bigger 147 fighter to fight Errol Spence coming off an eye injury like that. You ruin that guy's career. You ruin his career. But I also blame Kell Brook too, because you know what? You should have fought your mandatory. You should have fought Spence. You should have fought Spence in your prime. There's no excuse for that. So these guys going back and forth for who got the better Kell Brook win is pointless to me, because neither one of you fought him in his prime. Sean Porter was his prime. That's the best version of Kell Brook. So arguing about that doesn't change anything in this argument. The Sean Porter is a better argument because Sean Porter has always been good. He's never been brutally beaten. He's never gone up in weight and lost and come back down. He's never drained himself. Sean Porter is a better argument because you can go two ways. First of all, the gap in time wasn't wide. You asked me, the best version of Sean Porter was against Keith Thurman. That's the best Sean Porter I ever seen. He improved. You guys got to remember with Sean Porter, and I don't think they went too much into the Sean Porter thing on this podcast, but you got to remember, Sean Porter used to be just a really physical fighter. He didn't have much technique in his game. You guys remember the Julio Diaz fight? Do you guys remember that? Let me know in the comments. Do you remember when Sean Porter fought Julio Diaz? I think that was a draw, but it was a fight where if you watch it, you might have edged it for Diaz. Julio Diaz, yes, the Julio Diaz stat, Keith Thurman stopped. Good, solid fighter, good boxer, but he was outboxing Sean Porter. Now, Sean Porter won the rematch. But when he fought in Kell Brook, when he fought Devin Alexander, when he fought Julio Diaz, when he fought Devin Alexander, when he fought Kell Brook, Sean Porter was a football player. There was very little technique in his game at that time. After he lost to Kell Brook, he started developing his skills. You know what I'm saying? He would you would know the opportunities to dash in. You know what I'm saying? His speed increased, his jab became better, his timing became a little better. He started to get sharper. After that, Kell Brook lost. That Kell Brook fight, Kell beat him, outboxed him with timing, clean punches. It was a split decision, but Kell Brook was clearly the better man that night. But when Sean Porter fought Keith Thurman, that was a very, very close fight. That was a fight that I watched. I'm like, I think this fight could go either way. That could have, they said Sean Porter won that night. I wouldn't have even argued that. He improved on his game. That was the best version of Sean Porter. Sean Porter was still top dude, though. For Danny Garcia, you know what I'm saying? For Andre Berto. I went to that fight out in the Barclays. So when he got to Spence, he was still top dude. He was still one of the top welterweights. You know what I mean? And he lost to Spence, but he gave Spence one hell of a fight. It was a split decision win. I remember debating with people at the time. Like, some people thought Sean Porter win. I don't think it was no hating thing. I was watching it with my dad, and I had some family friends over. Some of you guys remember, I did reviews on the fight. And I think he thought Sean Porter edged it. I thought Spence edged it. with the knockdown and everything. Good fight, great fight, one of the best fights that year. But when he fought Bud, I didn't think Sean Porter was bad. A lot of people were saying, like, you fought the version of Sean that didn't care anymore. He was one fight away from retirement. Sean was still don't do Sean like that. Now, if you're mad that the fight was stopped premature by his dad, that's another argument. I'm not going to battle you with that one. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he was dropped twice, but he was definitely able to continue. But his father decided to throw the towel in. That is what it is. And shout out to everyone that's here. I see all you guys here. I see you, Charles. I see you, Donnie Teen. What's up with you, man? I see everyone that's joining the chat. I'm just trying to get this off real quick. Sean Porter was good. Sean Porter was good all the way to the end. You want to give Spence credit for the fight, that's fine. I think both fights were very competitive. But at the end of the day, when it came down to it, when it was time for Bud to put on a show, he closed it out. He closed it out. We can argue that the ref, the towel was thrown in. On paper, he closed the show. I don't know how much Sean had left. Yes, he was close to retirement. He's doing a podcast now. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, that fight was very close. And I'm talking about the two fights. They're not like the Kell Brook fights. Years difference. But Kell Brook was damaged even before Spence got to him. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Let's talk about the next thing that they were talking about. They made a few calls. They called Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia is from Philly, so, Gilly called Danny. And basically, Bud put a stamp on what I've always said about Danny Garcia. He's never beat anyone out welterweight. He's always been a tough fighter. He was good at 140. But there's been a lot of asterisks next to his name, even at 140. Danny was the best at 140 after Tim Bradley moved up. He stopped Namir Khan. He beat Lucas Matisse when he was an underdog. He did his thing at 140. All right, but, and there's some buts there. Mauricio Herrera, clear robbery. Clear robbery. I mean, no debating. Like, I've never heard anyone say Danny won that fight. No debated. Danny flew out to Puerto Rico, and he had the fans in Puerto Rico quiet. And he's never gone back there to fight again. You know what I mean? Never fought Victor Postal. Victor Postal was his mandatory for a minute. Never fought him. Moved up. All right? Beat Paulie. Beat Robert Guerrero. Beat Brandon Bam Bam Rios. But when it came up, Adrian Granados, good fights, good wins. But when it came to Porter, when it came to Thurman, when it came to Spence, he lost them. He lost those fights. And that's what Bud said. Like, why are we rating Danny Garcia so high? He's good, but at 147, he never beat any top dog at 147. So they called him, and Bud and Danny are cool. They've known each other since the amateurs. They have a good relationship. But he said it to his face, like, bro, you thought you won those fights, but you don't have to win over those guys. It is what it is. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Then he calls Bozy Ennis, the father of Jerron Boots Ennis. And, again, Gilly got connections with all of these guys because they're from Philly. And, Bud went back and forth with Bozy about why the fight with Jerron Boots Ennis didn't happen. And it was basically, look, is the BLK Black Prime joint, I went over there for a David Avenesian. They put the money up. It is what it is. Bozy mentioned, Showtime, that they were supposed to get somebody hit them back. They asked for it. They wanted the fight. They were asking for it. At the end of the day, Bud stance, and even with Jerron in his call, because he called right after, Bud's stance is, dude, why did you put yourself in a different sanctioning body to fight for Spence's title when you could have fought in the WBO for mine? Why would you switch sanctioning bodies? If you want to fight me, stay in your high ranking. Why would you leave the ranking to go elsewhere to fight for another sanctioning body that's targeting Spence? Why? Now we know that being that he's on Showtime, it would be easier to make that fight if it were to go down. But at the end of the day, it's not my fault that you moved to a different sanctioning body. Jerron Ennis says, well, why didn't you just choose me over David Avenesian? He's not trying to see you. He's trying to see Errol Spence. They're negotiating all year last year. This guy doesn't want to go a whole year without a fight. He takes David Avenesian, a top 10 ranked fighter, as a tune-up for 10 mil. And now they're having a Spence fight. Now, ducking and arguing talks between Errol and Bud, we can have that all night. But when it comes to everybody else in this division, nah, all of you other guys, you wait in line. Boots, you fight this guy over there, Ortiz or Stanionis. You know what I'm saying? You fight one of these guys. But let's not act like you're not positioning yourself to get a title against the next fighter when you could have positioned yourself to get a title right now. But even if you did, you're not going to get the fight against Bud over Spence. First of all, the Spence is a bigger fight. The Spence fight is a bigger fight. We all been waiting for it. We all been arguing. Boots, you just got here. So no one ducked you, bro. No one ducked you. And that's my stance. Like, yo, you guys that's on the come up, you guys, these guys that's been seasoned in the game, these guys are in their 30s. They're looking for an exit plan. Spence been through a whole bunch of shit. He's been in 2 car accidents. He's had an eye injury. All right. He has collected 3 of the 4 major titles. He's looking for his way out. These dudes are not going to stop their careers to fight you. Not right now, when the biggest fight is just they're this close to their biggest career fight and their biggest career payday, possibly. They're not going to stop that for you. Let's be real. Let's be honest. You know what I'm saying? Boots, you got a lot of options. But just going around and saying that guys is ducking you, first of all, put yourself in a position to fight the fighter that you want to face. Because if this Spence fight would have fell through, being that Ortiz removed or didn't take the fight twice. The fight was offered to him twice. He was a WBO mandatory after Sean Porter. He didn't want the fight. Now, if you had stayed over there, you might have gotten the fight before. You know what I mean? But this running around like, I was ducked. Nah, man. And I like Boots. But, when it comes to Boots and Ortiz and Stanionis and all these other younger fighters that's on the come up, fight each other, bro. Get one big one in before pause. Get one in before the big fight. You know what I mean? That sounds crazy. Anyway, good interview. Good interview. Good answers for Bud. I don't the Kell Brook argument I don't like because Kell Brook was damaged. Period. For both. I think the Sean Porter one is a good argument. Bud stopped him. Spence fought him earlier, you could go either way with that, but I don't like the Kell Brook argument, which is the argument that they argued. Charlo. Terence Crawford went in on Jamel Charlo. All right. Jamel Charlo have said a lot about Bud. And he basically said, look, we know that you a Texas fighter, you in the same camp as Spence. We already know you're going to support Spence. Cool. But if you're going around, going on social media, doing interviews like you're going to get knocked out, we smoking on a belt, Bud pack and all that stuff. We smoking on Bud, all that stuff. I don't blame Bud for calling him out. But Bud is not just calling him out on what he said. He's basically been saying consistently, and he's been very consistent, very loud and clear about it. After he beats Errol Spence, he wants to go up and fight Jamel Charlo. He's been consistent with that. He has never changed when it came to that. You know, he says he has to see me for the comments that he's been making. You know what I mean? I love it. I just love the competitive nature of it all. I'm looking forward to Spence doing a sit down with, even though $1 million worth of game is not a sports podcast. Like I said, Gilly is familiar with boxing and he knows a lot of these fighters. So I love that. He was able to bring up certain fights. And I'm just overall glad that the fight is happening. I'm glad that it's happening. I know it took a lot for us to get here. I actually went back the other day and watched I love the original back and forth they had in the arena. When Spence was wearing a red jumpsuit and Bud was there and they was going back and forth. It's always good to go back and watch that because that was the best exchange face to face that we've gotten recently between two fighters. You know what I mean? I think the argument there for Bud is even though Spence has said, and let's be honest, man, Spence pushed the whole, well, I'm picking up all these easier belts or these belts over here first before I go to you. We already know that Al was going to keep everything in-house. That's the way they move. That's the way everybody move. If there's multiple belts, we're going to clear house and then we're going to move and go to where we need to go to get the belts. That's what Canelo did, right? Canelo kept it. He's Matchroom, or not Matchroom, but he's a DAZN fighter. He kept it over there, clearing out over there all the fighters that's fighting in DAZN. Went right over to PBC and took the last one from Caleb Plant. So now Bud is a free agent. They worked everything out in the PBC, and now we're getting the fight. Yes, it could have happened earlier. But if you really think about it, Spence held his word, took his word, got the belts on his side. In his very next fight, he's fighting Bud Crawford. And we know they were trying to get him in there with Thurman real bad. They wanted him to fight Keith Thurman so bad. And I'm glad this guy chose to stay inactive to fight Bud Crawford. I'm so glad because we didn't want any more delays. You guys couldn't work on a deal last year. So Bud took a fight because he was inactive for over a year. I figured that there was going to be another fight with Spence before fighting Bud because he hasn't been in the ring since Ugas, and he honestly hasn't been in the ring that much. Since the car accident, he's only fought Ugas and Danny. And the Danny fight was it 2020? Yeah, it was in 2020. He fought Sean Porter in 2019. You know what I mean? So it was a good interview. It was a funny interview. I even like the part where I think the funniest part was when Wallow and Gilly was arguing with each other. And Wallow was like, yeah, I used to train Boots. I trained them. He kept saying that, like, I trained them. And he's like, yeah, I'm on, I'm more of a martial arts guy, like I'm into karate and all that. And he's like, I was the mini dumb wrestling champ. He said something stupid. So they start dumb wrestling or whatever. Wallow beat him and Wallow. Gilly said to Wallow, you only the dumb wrestling champ because you used to jerking off from being upstate. That part was really funny because Wallow did 17 years in prison. So Gilly made a joke like, "Oh, you probably the dumb wrestling champ because you just used to jerking off." Real funny. It was a really funny show. I like to see Bud this lively. What I realized with Bud is that he's not comfortable with doing like media-based type interviews. You know what I'm saying? When the microphone's up there and he's just not comfortable. Like when him and Spence was on Stephen A show the other day. It's like PC interview. You know what I'm saying? I think Bud is more, even Spence too. I don't think Spence and Bud both do politically correct kind of interviews. Like they say how they feel, but they don't have the energy. You know what I'm saying? They don't have that barbershop talk kind of energy when they're talking to the media, the mainstream media. But when they're talking like this interview here with Gilly, you know what I'm saying, where he's more relaxed and he's just getting off, you could tell the dude looks very relaxed. And the same with Spence. Like these guys are different when they were face to face talking trash to each other in that arena years ago. They look more comfortable having that kind of exchange instead of having an exchange with Stephen A. Smith. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole world is watching now. And I think in those opportunities, they don't really talk that much. I don't know. They're not that great at selling it. But when they have those talks on those other podcasts or like shows where they feel real comfortable, then it's a better interview. You know what I mean? I do want to hear Errol interview though. I don't know if he's gonna go to million dollar worth of game. I'm sure they're gonna go on the Breakfast Club. I think they're gonna go and do, they're definitely gonna do a tour of different kind of like media coverage. I'm looking forward to it. I already have a list of topics on videos that I want to do on this fight. A lot of things have been said about the fighters, and I definitely want to cover it. Even though I'm rooting for Bud in this fight. I'm gonna keep it as unbiased as possible. You know what I mean? And I don't always agree with everything Bud fans say or Bud says. And I'm gonna call it out. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna be fair all the way through. Just like I did in my prediction and breakdown video, I brought up a lot of points that I think that are pro Spence on why I think he has a chance of winning the fight. You know what I'm saying? I do think it's a 50-50 fight. But I'm leaning towards Bud winning the fight. You know what I mean? So anyway, I wanted this to address that, man. It's getting late. I just wanted to get on here for an hour. And I'm gonna get on out of here, man. Y'all have a good night. Please, again, subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button, share the video, and I'll see you guys on the next show. Peace.